okay, there it is. If I click on it, now I'm working with a JPEG. It's telling you right here, a movie file, that's the number of the file, .jpeg, working with a JPEG image. Now, what does that mean to us at this point? That means now I can hit the D key for Develop module, and it will give me all of my Develop settings. Now, this is the workaround that I thought was kind of interesting. Soft proofing is still on. I'm going to hit the S key to turn off the soft proofing so I can just work a lot quicker. And let's apply some adjustments to this. How about I'm right over here, and this is where we can start talking a little bit about some of the changes in the Develop module, but then I'm going to come back a little bit later on and bring up another image and show you a little bit more of the beauty of what's going on here. Number one, you're going to find out that your sliders have all been zeroed out. Everything's neutraled out. All the sliders are in the same place. Moving it to the left will give you one set of instructions. Moving it to the right is going to give you another set of instructions. What that normally means is moving it to the right is going to make brighter features within this targeted aspect of your image. When I talk about targeted aspect, I'm talking about the three areas that Lightroom will always be working in: shadows, midtones, and highlights. All right? So let's go to the exposure to adjust for our midtones. So what the exposure is doing is it's making adjustments to your shadows, midtones, and highlights equally. All right? So from 0 point, make darker. From 0 point or neutral gray, like our exposure system with the neutral gray card, anything brighter than neutral goes white until it becomes 255 white or 00 black in the opposite direction. I'm going to bring down, add a little bit of tonality to my midtones, which also brings down my other values as well. That's fine. I want to add some contrast. I want the edges of this leaf to kind of glow a little bit. So let's go to the shadows. Let's bring down the shadows. Bringing down the shadows will help to create a richer base to catapult those midtones and those highlights forward, giving you more of a three-dimensional feel in your object. This is basic printing and 101, all right? So go to our shadows, and I'm going to bring them down. Now, I know in some of the video tutorials, everybody says, no, watch those highlights, no, bring in the highlights first. I need you to understand what these are doing so that you can, at will, jump independently back and forth through any of these things, understanding what tonal values you're actually targeting within your image. So shadows, I want to bring down richer. Blacks, I may want to bring down the more extreme values of the blacks. You notice that this didn't really go dark enough. So I go to the blacks. Why? Because I want to target the darker values, and there it is. Now that's a little richer. That's going to help add contrast. I love this new setup, and it's the process 2012. We're going to talk about that in just a little bit. Now I can start focusing on the highlights. The whole idea was to bring down the lower tones and the midtones a little richer, so it provides me a base to allow these highlights to pop out but maintain details there. And what I could do is I can go right over here to highlights and bring them up there. It just targets the highlights, and it's adding a little bit more of a nice little pop to the image, and even geometrically adding a little more interest. I can go to the whites and target the more extreme values of the rise of white. So if I get in closer, I'm going to hit Control+ on my keyboard. There we are. And I'm going to scroll this down. I'm going to target more of the extreme areas of the white, and that is what the whites are going to do, and that's how it's separate from highlights. Highlights is the subtler values, the little darker values of highlights. This is the really, really extreme values, which are closer to the 255 range. So as I pull this up higher, you can see, there we go. You see what's happening? I don't want to blow this out. So just enough to give it a nice little glow there. All right, let's go Control-, bring it down and see the entire thing. Well, what more can I do with this? Let's add some clarity to it. Let's sharpen it up just a little bit. There we go. Look at that. Or I can bring down clarity to soften it. And again, it's just a matter of what your creative taste or what your goals are. I'll give it a little bit in between, all right? How about some vibrance? Subtler variations of saturation. It's not going to target my shadows, midtones, and highlights equally where everything really gets oversaturated or become complete black and white. All right, I'm going to double-click on that to set it back, to reset it back to 0, and I'll bring up the vibrance. Keep in mind that you can reset everything just by hitting the reset button right down here, all right? So in my opinion, I'm thinking, all right, black can probably come down a little richer. There we are. That's a little nicer. All right, so I can do more with this. I can even go into other possibilities and talk about the split toning effect. I can do that as well, but let's not worry about it at this point. I think you're going to get the idea that you can start applying a lot of these values or a lot of these adjustments to your individual image. Now, what I need to do is this. Video will not be edited and developed. However, it will be edited by using a preset. Now, that I thought was very interesting. If I can set the develop modules in the develop module to a preset and it's going to apply it to the video, that's capability of applying to the video, then shouldn't I still be able to edit the video like a standard image? Well, I think that has to do with a memory issue that Adobe may have encountered, but who knows. So let's go ahead and save this as a preset. I've made my adjustments. We're right over here on the left-hand side. Let's make a new preset, and we're going to call this one Steve's Yucca. Well, maybe it's Yucca is spelled with the 2 C's and the A. Okay, I'm an artist. I'm not an English teacher, so I'm guessing on this one. So Steve's Yucca plant, and right over here, I have what adjustments that I want to save. If I just did an auto tone, I can select that. All right, but I'm going to, I did, various exposures, the basic tones, so I'm going to keep that off, and I'm going to go ahead and create this new preset, and there it is on the Steve's Yucca plant. Now, how can we apply this to the video? Well, let's go over here and have some fun. How about we select on the video itself? Now, remember, the video can't be edited here in the develop log. So it's the G key for the grid view, and let's preview this video in the grid view. We're in the movies, and here's my video. Okay, scrolling back and forth. Now this is my original color, okay, my original adjustment, color adjustment. Now, with the video targeted, let's go to the saved preset. We have all these types of presets we can apply to. So come in here and play around with these and go to custom preset, and there's Steve's Yucca plant, and select it. Now, it's going to give you this error message, which I thought was interesting as well. Some developed settings are not supported for video, but it does it anyway, right? Some developed settings are not supported for files. Only the following settings will be selected within the preset, and it tells you what those settings are, all right? But, okay, whatever. So click OK, and we have our video right here with all those adjustments applied to it. So those are nice little things. Now, what do we really want to do with video? We want to edit color and effects and so forth. We want to bring it into After Effects after we work in Premiere. But you have these capabilities inside of Lightroom. Okay, so let's go and talk about some of the new features dealing with the Develop module a little bit more thoroughly. Let's come over here to my imported images. It's called the Zero New Lightroom folder. I'm going to go to my grid view here, and let's go over here, and I can select a variety of images, and let's go ahead and see the single view. Let's go back to grid view, and I'm going to go and select an image. How about let's scroll through these right down here to the bottom. Let's go ahead and bring this down just a little bit. And I'm going to find something that I think is going to be kind of fun. Now, these are some shots that I've taken in Death Valley. I've created a couple of different folders, one for all the Death Valley folders, images that have been unaltered or unmanipulated. And then I have another folder that I call Death Valley Merged Panels that would include the merging panoramics as well as images that have been altered tonally to some extent. I'm going to deal with these, and I guess I wanted to focus on Death Valley, to help to make you guys aware of my Death Valley workshop, which is happening on May 2nd through the 5th, and we're going to be going to all of these magnificent locations to photograph this incredible national park that we have here on the west side of the United States. So if you can make it, go to my website, go to the workshop section, and you'll see the Death Valley option in there. Okay, let's go select this one right down here. Now, this was a view. This was a individual panel view. And what I'm going to do is I did one as a panel. Let's go to the Merge panel. And it's right here that I've actually have not done any color manipulation on in terms of in Lightroom, but what I have done is I've just merged them together. And just to give you an idea of what can be done, the new features in a Develop module, let's go ahead to the Develop module and make you aware of what's new in here. Not only did we go over a little bit of some of the features in terms of the positioning of the highlights and shadows and being zeroed out, we have this process view where when we're in the Develop module, we can change process that we want to use. Okay, I'm going to cover that in just a minute. And actually, let's go ahead and cover that right now. Why not? Let's go ahead and move this on over and bring this down. Command-0, Control-0. I'm going to bring this down to full frame. Under the calibration, the camera calibration, we have what's a process. And what all this is Adobe allowing you guys, because most of us artists really don't like changes. We don't accept changes well. Once we start working really well in a particular system of things based on a particular workflow from our software, we really have a hard time making a change. So what Adobe allowed us to do is say, hey, if you guys are working with the older version of Adobe Camera Raw, we can switch it back to that. For example, if you're working with an older version of Lightroom 1 or 2, which is back in 2003, we can go to the 2003 process, and if you come right up here to the top, you'll notice that your sliders have all changed. It went back to the old way before Lightroom 4. And, of course, our recovery is back to 0, 0 to the left, lights to the left, blacks to the left. It's exactly the way you saw things for Lightroom 4. So let's go back and scroll down, and if we want to make an adjustment to 2010, it should basically show us the same thing, because 2010 was the same functionality and workflow. However, you notice right down here we have a little exclamation point. When we went back to the old process, it says, hey, you're working with the old process. Would you like to actually update this process? It's really pretty easy to do. Just click on it, and it'll do it for you. Now, it's going to give you a little dialog box saying, hey, this change is going to happen. Do you want it to change? Do you want to update this? And there's going to be some changes in how your image is going to look, so don't freak out, all right? Now, you can do one of two things. Let's try this. Let's cancel this for now. What if I right-click on the image, and I decide to make a virtual copy? Now, this is possible. Virtual copies are possible without editing the original image, because Lightroom is functioning from a central database called a catalog. Now, if I select this one here and click this here, update, I can update this particular file, okay? And All right, so there we have it. It's a little dog-eared effect here, and it's showing you that, you know, we have other processes added to it. So we have a different process, and you'll also get this dog-eared effect when you apply a soft proofing as well. It'll show you, if you select your mouse and mouse over it, it'll show you the soft proofing profile over the right-hand side. In fact, just so that you're aware of this, let's go ahead and select the soft proofing very quickly. And I applied the Adobe RGB, and if let's go right over here, go right up here to the top, and I'm going to show you another little quick thing. I can even simulate the paper base here. Let's go ahead and select a different profile just for fun. Let's go to our 4800, which is simulating the paper right about here, and I can create a proof copy, okay? Now, all this is just another virtual copy. The only difference is that in this virtual copy, if we mouse over this, you can see the profile in the top right-hand corner of this display menu. All right, does that make sense? All right, so either way, they're both virtual copies. It doesn't matter. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the soft proofing. I know the soft proofing will sometimes take up a little extra memory, so let's go ahead and just work on this third copy right about here. What can we do new in Lightroom 4? What's happening here? Okay, we already talked about the position of our slider. Of course, the highlights is now targeting our highlight values. As we can see, look at the clouds, the details come back into the clouds. Now, what if I like what's going on overall in the image, but I just don't, I want to just add a little more detail in the brighter version of the barn as well as the clouds themselves. I can use this little brush here. We have some nice little added extra features. We have our white balance, which is new in our brush. Okay, and then we have some of the sharpness features, a lot of neat little features down here that we're going to cover as well. So this is when you hit the brush, we're going to click, make sure that the new adjustment is going to be selected. I'm going to put a little dot. I'll put a little dot right up here in the clouds. And let's apply a setting just to the clouds. Now, what setting do I want? I really want to bring down the detail in the clouds. Now, I use the highlight feature before, so I can bring the highlights down. Let's just go to exposure so I can get a stronger effect. And if I hit the bracket to the left on the right-hand side of the P key on my keyboard, hit the bracket to the left to bring down the mouse, and I can start to paint. Now, I'm using my Wacom pen to actually slowly apply this effect to my image. Control plus, I want to zoom in closer and do a better job. Space bar gives me my hand, bring it on down, and now that I've applied something using the exposure, bring this down to the center of the screen. There we go. Now that I've applied something using exposure, you can see what I've done. So from here, let's bring down the highlights. See, there we go. So our highlights and exposure. All right, about there. So I can use those two in combination. I can add another point. Let's go ahead and Command minus or Control minus, and we can deal with these highlights on the brighter portion on the left-hand side of the barn. Again, a new node, select it right about here. Let's just bring the highlights down. I want a little subtler because I want to maintain all types of detail in here. Bring up the size of my brush and start to paint a little bit. Okay, it's very, very subtle. If I bring the exposure down, you can see where it is I've actually touched. If I mouse over this and hold the brush, you get to hold it right over that node. You get to see the mask. So now that's not new. All that was possible in previous versions. All right, so I'm going to bring the mouse down a little bit more and bring this across. Okay, so we can also change the color temperature, which was not possible in the previous versions. All right, so I'm looking at the time, and we're pretty much have 1 minute left. There's so much more that I would like to share with you in Lightroom 4. So, number one, let's go to my website here very quickly before we actually stop the presentation. Go to my workshop section. I talked about the Death Valley class. Click on the Death Valley excursion, which is May 2nd through the 5th. Now, this is a 3.5-day workshop, and this is an interesting workshop in that I'm organizing this as a complete educational system. In other words, I have 2 shoots a day, sunrise and close to sunset. In between, in the afternoon of that shoot, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, we critique your photos. You pick your best photo, what you consider your best photo from those 2 particular shoots, and we critique it as a class. The second day we do the same thing, but you're going to find out during critique on the second day, your work is going to have improved based on the criticism that you received from the day before. Well, not criticism, but I like to say more advice or more suggestions. Criticism is often, taken negatively. Part of this workshop is a Photoshop class. On May 5th, which is a Saturday, we have a half day starting at 9 o'clock in the morning to 12 noon, 12 to 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We have a half-day Photoshop workshop where I'm going to be showing you guys how to apply Photoshop to landscape and nature photos, in particular to your work that you shot in Death Valley. You will also be getting an educational DVD to take back with you so that if you forget anything, you get to actually go back and review the content that we've reviewed in class, that we actually applied in class. Next, last of all, in terms of a workshop, the Lightroom 4 workshop starts in May 10th, okay? And this is right after we come back from Death Valley. We will be covering all the new features in Lightroom 4. This is a 5-week workshop. This is the only way, in my opinion, that you're really going to learn this stuff. We give you a solid foundation the first day of the class. We will expound upon each foundation every week so that you get a thorough understanding as to how and why Lightroom does what it does. We will be going into not only the new features, we'll be going into catalogs, custom creating catalogs for different clients, how to make virtual work effectively with virtual imagery, how to integrate this with Photoshop. How do you go into Photoshop, work your magic there, bring it back into Lightroom? It goes extensively into every aspect in Lightroom, as well as how to work effectively. The first day of the class is how to organize your work on external drives, categorize them, keyword them, so that you know where things are at all times. Okay, so we're approximately 5 minutes till, and what I would like to do is to open up questions, and I really hope this has been helpful. There's a lot of things I know that I didn't get a chance to cover, and but I really hope that this has been helpful, and maybe we can address some of those with some of the questions you have here.
Okay, so yeah, now is a part of our question and answer session. If you have any questions, please go ahead and type them into the chat panel and or the Q&A panel at this time. And then, Stephen, while we're waiting for some people to submit some questions, do you want to talk about the next webinar in the series that's going to take place on Tuesday?
Yes, I do. Absolutely. Today, as you've seen, you basically have been given an overview of Lightroom. Just, an overview of some of the new features and basically what Lightroom really is. In our next webinar, and I believe it's on the 27th of this month, we are going to, is that correct?
The 24th.
The 24th. Okay, everybody, I apologize. It's the 24th.
No, that's okay.
Okay, so it's the 24th. We're going to go into Lightroom and show you what you can do with it, all right? In other words, in my opinion, so what, you know that Lightroom can do all these things. What can you do with it that really counts? How can you make your photograph or your artwork really, just let the program work magic on it so it really jumps out to your viewer? And we're going to be doing a lot of work with how to integrate this with Photoshop CS6. I'm going to be using the CS6 beta. We're going to be importing images into CS6, working magic in CS6, some of the new features of CS6, We're going to go right back into Lightroom again and show you how you can work the image there. We're going to be talking about catalogs. We're going to show you more practical examples of how to create new catalogs and why you want to create new catalogs, how to keep them organized, how to categorize your images more effectively, how to work particularly. We'll go to our library view. We're going to how to work particularly with collections, how to really start using collections to be more effective in creating your final image through your workflow. Okay? So hopefully that answers the question as well.
Yeah, that was good. And then I'd like to, we have a question here. I'm not sure if the person who's asking is still on the line because they were having some bad weather, but the question is, can Lightroom 4 use the geocode if it's embedded in the metadata?
Absolutely it can. If the geocode is already embedded in the metadata, and remember, what Lightroom is a database management program. Well, what is the database in Lightroom? The data, and where does the database come from? Where does that database engine pull that information from? It's pulling it all from your metadata. That's why it works so well as a database program. That's why database functionality for a program like this was really a very practical approach for Adobe when it came down to them to creating Lightroom, because metadata is basically text information, really. So in database engines work so well with text. So all Lightroom is doing is going into your metadata, reading all that metadata, and allowing you to organize it and categorize it and do all types of things with it in a creative way or an organizational way. And your geotagging is nothing more than what? Text-based coordinates, okay? So it will read that existing geotagging in those files and allow you to actually view them on the map. Now, my images, because I'm using a 60D, does not have the geotagging built into the camera. And there are workarounds in terms of using a geotagging device, but again, you have to just attach it through Lightroom. So yes, the answer to the question is yes, you can do that.
Okay, great. And I think that those are our only questions for now, so we'll go ahead and wrap it up.
Those are the only questions?
So
Either
it says, I see some HDR panels. Can you elaborate?
Okay. Would you ask the question again, please?
Sure. It says, I see some HDR panels. Can you elaborate?
Okay. The HDR panel we're going to be doing, actually sharing in the next webinar extensively. That's part of the creative. That's going to be part of the creative workflow with Lightroom into Photoshop.
Great, and that's a very good segue into so that webinar that you spoke about. You can register for that. We'll be sending out an email about it periodically to register, but you can also register for it by going to www.macmall.com, clicking on the Business Resources tab, and then it is on it's under the live webinar block. And so, you know, we encourage all of you who attended today to attend on Tuesday as well for, you know, a deeper dive into what Stephen presented.
And if I may mention one last thing, for those of you who will be attending next week, if you don't have Photoshop CS6, the front page of my website, you have a direct link to Photoshop CS6 beta. Go on, download it, play with it, so when you come back to the webinar next week, you'll get to be more familiar as to, you know, what's really possible between the two programs.
Okay, great. Well, Stephen, thanks so much for a great presentation today. It was very interesting. We have a lot of very positive comments that Lightroom looks really cool and people are excited about it. So, great job. And we're all, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, thank you all for coming, and I look forward to seeing everybody next week.
Yes, we do. So thanks, everyone. This concludes our event today. Have a great rest of your day.